Okay. And I think with that, we'll get started. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nick Custer. I work for the University of Michigan Flint's Office of Economic Development, and specifically its Innovation Incubator Program, which is a no-cost business incubation program that helps individuals like yourself out in the community connect with resources and build that business. I'm very excited to offer this panel today. If you guys don't know, this is a first of a series of 3 different workshops that are going to be around supporting local food entrepreneurs like yourselves. I see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones, so I'm glad that you all can make it today. And hopefully you'll join us for our next 2 workshops. If you still haven't registered for those and you'd like to, in the chat, I've put 2 links to the different sessions. Building Blocks 2 is going to be our next session on October 21st. And Building Blocks 3 is going to be the final one in November. So we hope you guys can join us for those as well. Just a few quick things for you guys. We are recording this session. So that means if you have to step away or if you miss anything, it will be available on the Innovation Incubator website where we have all of the workshops we've done over the last 8 months recorded and there for your viewing at your pleasure. Just a few more things. We're going to ask you guys again to just stay muted throughout the session. That way we avoid any potential background noise issues. And to save those questions for the very end. And there'll be plenty of time there to ask anything that's come up during the session. Again, there are going to be a lot of resources thrown at you guys throughout this. We don't expect you to take notes on every single thing. We have your email from registration, and so you'll receive an email with a list of those resources that are mentioned after today's session. And if there's any other things that you guys have issues or concerns with, feel free to email me directly after the session today at ncuster@umich.edu, which I'll also put in the chat. So with that, I'm very excited to introduce our main speaker today, Mr. Sean Gartland, who is the chef and owner of Feast Gourmet Kitchen Shop in Fenton, Michigan, which is a cooking school, as well as the culinary director of the Flint Food Works, which is a commercial kitchen located downtown Flint inside the farmer's market. So with that, I think I'll hand it right off to Sean and we'll get started with today's session.
Thanks, Nick. So welcome to everybody. I know I've scrolled through some of the names here on the attendees, and I have definitely met with some of you guys and hope to meet with some more. Nick and I had, along with some others, have kind of brainstormed this group or this series of workshops to be a very quick introduction into how to get your business set up in the world of producing a food product. And we hope that you guys kind of glean from this some helpful information to get you going and point it in the right direction. So we're going to be covering quite a few things here. I'm going to start sharing my screen. I've got a little bit of a presentation for everybody. So we'll start there. Okay. So what we're starting, and I can't see on my end, but does that look okay to you, Nick?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay. So what we're going to start with here is just kind of the business setup from the ground up. And what we're talking about here are the very basics of taking your idea and even, launching into an actual legitimate business of some sort. So we're going to cover topics that range from, filing your paperwork with the federal government in the state of Michigan to covering establishing a commercial bank account. And then we're going to go over some very, very simple principles of small business accounting and also get into the nitty gritty of getting your business licensed with the Michigan Department of Agriculture or the Genesee County Health Department. And then lastly, we'll finish with how to actually make a little bit of money or figure out if you're going to make money doing this. So we're going to show you kind of a clear path to figuring everything out here. First and foremost, as you're starting to form a business idea and getting yourself established, the first step in that is to kind of identify yourself with the federal government. This, gives you something called a federal entity identification number. It's kind of like your business's social security number. And this is a step that is very easily done, really quick, and it can be done within 15 or 20 minutes. It's something that people don't realize how quick and easy it might be, and it's done right from the IRS website, which I'll show you in a minute. into moving into actually registering your business with the state of Michigan. And that is basically when somebody asks you, do you have your articles of incorporation? This is where that comes into play. When we're talking about registering with the state of Michigan as an LLC or a partnership or a sole proprietorship and that sort of thing. Once you have these two key kind of tasks finished, you can actually launch into opening up a business banking account, which we'll talk about later on in this workshop, and the importance of keeping your finances separate from your business finances separate from your personal finances. And then with those kind of simple building blocks in hand, you can start talking about getting your business licensed and becoming an actual food establishment. And then we'll launch into, as you're kind of pursuing that license, the different paperwork that you need to fill out, like such as plan review and your standard operating procedures. And then I have this as number 5, but it probably should be 0.05. Like before you even start thinking about having a business, is thinking about the profitability and whether or not you can actually make money doing this. So we talk to a lot of people every day here, especially at the Flint Food Works, who have great ideas on paper, maybe, and maybe in their heads. Maybe they've got grandma's secret recipe and they want to try and figure out how to make a business out of it. And the first thing we have to talk to them about is, can you actually make a profit doing it? So with that being said, let's talk about setting up your business entity. One of the things, I'm going to kind of switch my screen share here, and we're going to go to the website. So the IRS has a website, and we'll share this link with you if you've never been here. We'll share this in the resources document that we'll send out later. But this is the website that you come to establish your EIN number. And it's very simple. You'll see the navigation through it's really easy. You basically just have to choose what sort of entity you're going to set up. And we'll talk about this in a second. The most common way that we talk to people about setting up a business is something called a limited liability company, or LLC. And as you make these choices and start to kind of navigate through this application, which I can't do I can't move through it completely with you during this exercise, but you're going to add information such as your personal information, address, contact information, social security number, and various things. It's going to spit out at the end for you a document that you get to print out, and this becomes like your founding document for your business. When you go to file your taxes at the end of the year for your business, this is the number that's going to be used to identify your business with the IRS. All right, I'll go back to our slide here real quick. So as you're trying to figure out how to structure your business, there are a few different things that you can consider. I would say sole proprietorship, or some people file with a county, something called a DBA, a doing business as. This is the first sort of most simple way to basically take what you're going to be doing and separate it from your personal life. So some of the advantages of sole proprietorship are that it's very easy and inexpensive to establish. Profits are only taxed once at your owner's rate, meaning whatever money you make as a sole proprietor just kind of goes right onto your personal tax returns at your own rate. Some of the disadvantages, you have unlimited personal liability for business debts. So if you take money out for in the name of your business, and then you decide, I'm going to fold up my business and just go do something else, those debts are going to follow you into your personal life. The other limitation here is that obviously being sole, it's limited to one person. So there's not really an ability to help, expand your business with partners or investors. The next would be a partnership, similar to a sole proprietorship, but you're doing it with a buddy, or at least what we would hope would be a friend at that point in time. General partnerships are easy and inexpensive to establish. Each partner's share of the profits are only taxed once. It allows for ownership by more than one individual, obviously. Disadvantages: general partners have unlimited personal liability for business debts. This could come in and kind of bite you in the behind if you are in business with a partner who does something dubious in the name of the business, and then it kind of tracks back to you. So that's something to be consider as you're setting this sort of structure up. Um, the other thing to think about is, there could be some tricky paperwork or legal documents that need to be put in place before you go into partnership to ensure that when the partnership dissolves, it's done equitably. Corporation or incorporation, these are really nice in the way that they can help you raise funds through stock. Um, there's limited liability for the business debts, so the shareholders only risk their investment. So if you ask somebody to be an investor in your corporation, it's only their investment that's at risk. It's kind of costly to set up and maintain. If you're starting to talk about an actual corporation with the INC after the end of it, you're most likely going to need to get an attorney and an accountant involved to help you kind of navigate all the paperwork that needs to be filed on a regular basis. It's a little bit more complex, something that's not easy to run on your own. Lastly, that LLC. The reason, I personally, and, disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an attorney, I'm not an accountant, I'm just a guy who does business. But one of the reasons we recommend this is that it's very easy to set up. It's limited. It limits your liability for business debts. It tax as a partnership, so there's no double taxation, and it's easier to establish and maintain than a corporation. One of the things that's a disadvantage here is that once you work as an LLC, you're not permitted to just take money out of your business without naming it a wage or a profit distribution. So it's a little bit trickier to record how much money you're taking out of that. Well, before we move on, I want to show you. So if you decide that you want to establish an LLC after you've gone ahead and figured out your EIN number, the state of Michigan has a very simple website for this as well. It's their LARA, Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, and they have a corporate online filing system. So I've run into a lot of people over the course of the last few years who have used attorneys at great cost for their limited liability company setup. If you are working with somebody or a group of people, I definitely recommend that. You should talk to somebody who's professional, who can guide you through the partnership agreements and such. If you're a single person starting a business, it's easy to do this at a more cost-effective way, just by going to the state of Michigan website, and you start off by just forming your limited liability company. Of course, I'm giving an error in the middle of this presentation, but when you do file this, it's a pretty easy setup, and all you do is fill out the paperwork here online and actually submit it down here at the end, and it costs $50. So it's pretty easy. Nothing complex here to fill out other than your purpose of your business, the name of your business, your actual contact information, and if you have any other kind of mission statement or things that you want to include in here, you can as well. But it's very easy to set up for $50. So between the EIN, which is free from the IRS, and setting up your articles of incorporation with the state of Michigan, you can have your business set up, very quickly and very inexpensively. All right, going back to our presentation here. So once you have those documents in hand, you print off your EIN number from the IRS, and you have received a certified copy of the articles of incorporation from the state of Michigan, then you are all set to go ahead and set up a business banking account. I think this is extremely important because as a new business, you should definitely um, think about, making sure that you're, sorry, one second here. I want to make sure we're sharing the right desktop here. All right. Once you have your business banking account set up, you are able to kind of separate your business income and expenses, from your personal. If you're married or living with a significant other, and your income is, or your banking accounts are mixed a little bit, it might help to kind of pull your business aside from that personal account, so that you're not kind of mixing things up too much. So it's very easy. I'd recommend, doing your research and picking a bank that, or credit union that suits your needs. There, are many of them out there, from local credit unions to local or regional or even national banks that offer free business checking accounts. These are very easy to set up with those documents we just talked about. You take them in there and they'll get you going. Um, One of the benefits of having a business bank account, obviously, is that level of protection that it gives you. Businesses, offer limited personal liability protection while keeping your business funds separate from your personal funds. The other thing there is that they may offer something called merchant services, where you're able to start collecting payments from your customers on credit cards, which we'll talk about in a second as well. The other part there is professionalism. As you're paying vendors, or if you're seeking credit from a vendor. So if you're starting a food product and you want to start working with possibly Gordon Food Service, for instance, they're going to want to see some business banking information to ensure that you can pay your bills with them. So that's very nice. And obviously, if you're paying vendors, or vendors or excuse me, customers are paying you, they'll be paying your business name. So Sean's, cook shop or whatever it might be, they're paying their checks directly to that and not to Sean Gartland, an individual. Preparedness, business banking usually comes with the option of a line of credit for the company. This is It's only a half truth. It depends on how established you are, and what your bank or willing. Often when you're setting up these accounts, they also offer you the option to apply for a credit card in the name of the business. And obviously we can debate up and down the road whether or not credit cards are a good idea. But as a business, one of the things that a credit card can provide you, especially in the beginning, is a little bit of uh, expanded spending power, help with your cash flow, as well as establishing business, credit for in the name of your business. So later on down the road, when it comes time to possibly expand, or look for new investment, you'll have a track record of a credit history with your business. And obviously, purchasing power in the name of your business bank account comes as well. So the documents needed are that EIN number, your business formation documents, so that articles of incorporation. Ownership agreements only come into play if you're in there with a partnership. So if you and another person or a group of people are opening a business together and all putting yourselves on the bank account as signers, the bank will want to see some sort of a document outlining your agreements, and then your business license. Okay. Um, So the next thing to think about is, once you've got your business up and running, is whether or not you can actually uh, make some money doing it. And to do that, you need to keep track of your business banking account. And it can be as simple as going to the drugstore and buying one of those old-fashioned ledger books, um, popping open your computer and opening up a spreadsheet, and starting a column of income and a column of expenses. But the basic gist of it is, what you're trying to keep track of are your profits. So any sales you make minus the cost of putting that, and we'll use a food product for example. So you're selling cookies, the sales that you bring in from selling those cookies minus the cost of all the ingredients to put those cookies together. That equals your gross profits. The next thing you have to keep track of is all of your expenses. So payroll, and I'll discuss this further on, but paying yourself is important to figure in there. Things like insurance, basic supplies. So if I'm making cookies, I may need boxes to put the cookies in, or a mixer, or some extra whisks and bowls and that sort of thing. Dues and subscriptions can be expenses. So sometimes when you're starting out, maybe joining a chamber of commerce or a professional organization, or if you subscribe to a service to keep track of your accounting, like QuickBooks, that would be a business expense. Credit card processing fees. So if you use a service like Square or PayPal, or even the merchant services of your bank, they're going to take a certain percentage out of every single transaction that happens. Those little transaction fees are included as a business expense. If you have to buy a van to deliver your cookies around, anything associated with maintaining or purchasing that van could be an expense. Rent. So whether you're renting a kitchen like the Flint Food Works, or if you have your own four walls that you're working within, that is a business expense. Taxes that you pay, office supplies, and I can go on and on and on. So obviously you're going to want to keep track of all of this stuff, because at the end of the year, the IRS wants to know where things were spent. All right. So this that was a big mouthful there, but we talked about getting your business set up, working with on getting your bank account set up, and also kind of keeping track of the money you make. Before I move on to the next slide, just to show you another resource, I want to talk a little bit about something that's very easy to use. This is a website called Wave Accounting, and it's a free online accounting software similar to QuickBooks. It's very, very easy to use. You can actually link directly to your bank to bring over your transactions, or you can just log in and kind of put everything in manually. But obviously I've got this. It's called the Food Business, and some of the things that you may keep track of as you're paying your bills during the month would be something like rent, the sales that you make of potato chips, the potatoes that you bought to make the potato chips. All of that stuff gets tracked in these transactions here. And when it comes time to meet with your accountant, or possibly talk to a bank about getting a loan, you may want to show them something called a balance sheet, all right, which would give a listing of everything that's in your bank account. Or more importantly, they're going to want to see something called a profit and loss, or income statement. So every time you put a transaction into that last little screen I showed you, this shows you income of $200 minus the cost of the ingredients, gives me 150 gross profit. And then you got operating expenses in there of $144. So you have, your net profit at the end of the day is $6. So I'm not showing you an example of a very profitable business, but we're looking at a nice report that you can print off and take to the bank with you. So I would, we'll include the links to this Wave accounting program within the documents we're going to share with you guys later. All right. Okay, so now the complicated part. We figured out how to set our business up, but now we need to figure out how we actually get licensed. And some of the things that you're going to want to consider when you're looking at licensing yourself, and actually as you're maybe meeting with us today here at this webinar, I'm imagining that some of you are mulling over a possible idea or a concept that you're thinking of expanding on. And this is going to give you an idea of what direction you might want to take. So with the differences in how food is produced is going to determine which entity is your regulator. All right, the person who's going to give you your inspection, the person who's going to issue your license. So we've got two different routes to take. You're either going to work with the county health department, and in our case in Flint, we're working with the Genesee County Health Department, or you're going to work with the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, MDARD. If you're producing food that is kind of time and temperature controlled, food that is, I guess for the lack of a better term, I'll use like a restaurant, takeout, catering, food truck, any sort of food where it's prepared and then you hand it off to the customer to eat, or you transport to the customer and set up in a catering line sort of a deal. You're going to be dealing with the county health department. They handle all of that sort of business. If, on the other hand, you are creating a product that then you put into a package, so like the picture on the right shows lots of these different food products, anything that would be cooked and possibly cooled off, put into a container, labeled, and then sold under refrigeration, or anything that might be prepared and pickled or preserved in some way to put on the shelf, or anything that basically gets, 12 cookies get put into one container and they get a label. That sort of production is overseen by the Michigan Department of Agriculture, and they're the ones who regulate that. So I'm going to do a real quick scroll through to see if okay, we do have Tracy on here. And what we're going to do is talk a little bit about, I'm going to introduce one of our local inspectors here shortly. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the advantages and disadvantages here, and then some of the complexities of making some shelf-stable food. So for full service catering and that sort of thing, there's a little bit of a high cost involved in getting set up, and part of that has to do with something called a site plan review fee. And that is going to take into account the county health inspector wanting to know things like your hot water supply, where your garbage is stored, do you have proper sinks for your ware washing and food washing and mopping, which all must be separate? Is there a need for public restroom facilities? Is it possible that you need parking spaces because of a restaurant that has mountains? They're going to look at things like wall covering and flooring. They really want to know about the facility that you're going to be preparing and serving food in. So there's a site plan review fee that is involved with that. Along with that is an annual license fee. So I'm showing two figures that are associated with the Genesee County Health Department. Depending on where you're establishing your food service establishment in the state, it may differ. Here locally, it's $1,100 for a site plan review fee, and then your annual license fee is $705. So we're looking at $1,800 just to get licensed. All right. So the high costs involved in that. On top of all of that is the actual infrastructure cost. So if you're looking at building out your own space, either in a lease space, or if you've purchased a building and you want to establish a commercial kitchen in there, all of the things I just listed before, the hot water supply, the surfaces, the ware washing, all of those things need to be considered during that site plan review before you actually start construction. That's why a place like the Flint Food Works, and I'll go ahead and plug our kitchens here. The Flint Food Works make it a little bit easier for you to get started. You're required to obviously pay that site plan review fee to the Genesee County Health Department, but all the costs involved in building out the infrastructure have already been done. So all of that stuff's in place. If you're thinking about operating as a caterer, you really need to make some considerations for how you're going to be transporting food from point A to point B safely. And generally, when the health department meets with one of our kitchen users here at the Flint Food Works, who is working as a catering operation, they're very concerned with how you're going to keep the food hot or how you're going to keep the food cold. And throwing your, tray of cooked chicken legs in the back of your vehicle and just hopping down the road for 10 minutes isn't going to cut it. So they want to make sure that you're using, proper insulated boxes, and there are different manufacturers for that. But that's a conversation you're going to want to have when you're considering catering. As for packaged food, I always say that there's a huge advantage to starting a food-based business when you're putting foods in a package, simply from the fact that you have access to becoming a limited wholesale food processor. And I just want to use a scenario here for you to consider. If you're on the line right now and you have an idea of starting, let's say, a catering company, one of the things I hear from a lot of different prospective catering companies is people love my food. Everywhere I go, they want more. I keep getting orders for it. And they love this salad dressing I make. And that's when I always stop them and I say, have you considered packaging and selling that salad dressing rather than opening up a full service catering company? And so what we have to mull over at that point in time is some of the benefits of making one product and selling it on a wholesale basis, as opposed to the daily grind of trying to crank out a full catering menu, transport it from point A to point B on a regular basis, and consistently get new customers. So the reason I like to steer people towards this product, one single product sort of scenario, is that it's very easy to get set up and get started. As you can see on this slide here, your retail food establishment license fee is $186. And that is if you just wanted to start your business and do direct to consumer sales. Or if you want to limit it, open it up to a limited wholesale food processor license, and possibly sell cases of your salad dressing to a distributor, for example, that's just an additional $186. So that's quite a bit less expensive than trying to start a catering company or a food truck, being, working with the Genesee County Health Department. The other advantage to this is that obviously you can schedule your production runs a little bit easier and keep back stock on hand. And so if you're wholesaling, you're possibly selling to a store, you're not doing the physical selling. So you're able to manage your time a little bit easier. And there's a tremendous opportunity for growth through something called co-packing, which may be another seminar that we put on at a later date. But if you are making this salad dressing that everybody loves, and you're able to get into like a Meijer, Kroger, Bush's, some sort of a grocery store chain, they may, sit across the desk from you one day and say, all right, I want 1,000 cases. And you're going to think to yourself, yes, I made a great sale. But you're not able to meet the demands of 1,000 cases right away on your own. So you may look at working with a co-packer, where you hand your recipe over to somebody and they produce it for you, label it, put it in a case, and then you can make your arrangements with the distributor. Now, there is one big restriction to all of this, and this is what I'm going to bring in our inspector, Tracy, to talk about any kind of TCS food. So this is a time and temperature controlled foods. Anything that must be refrigerated or frozen for sale, it's going to have to stay at those refrigerated or frozen states. If you want to create a product that gets put onto a shelf, like salsa, tomato sauce, pickles, things that had to be cooked and then cooled down, and then think of that canning process, you're going to have to jump through some extra hoops. And that's when this is where I want to kind of step in and talk a little bit about your plan review and operating procedures and ensuring that your safety is met. So for the site plan review, all you're going to have to do is basically put together a plan, and all the documents are on the state website or the county website that you download and fill out. They're like a review workbook, and it basically walks you through, for a site plan, it walks you through listing all the different equipment, all the different configurations of the kitchen space that you're going to be in, and that sort of thing. And you only need to fill this out if you're actually serving food directly to the consumer in addition to your normal operations. As for your standard operating procedures, these are something that are required for everybody except for vending locations. And this is where you're going to list, kind of based on your menu of product or products, how they're made and how you are going to ensure that you're taking the proper steps to do it safely. And this could be everything right down from hand washing, writing a procedure of how hands are washed, how you're going to take corrective action if somebody doesn't do it properly, to how you're going to receive your raw goods to make your product, and how you're going to ensure that those are kept at a proper temperature, how you're going to cook those to the proper temperature, how you're going to cool them off to the proper temperature, and how you're going to package them in a proper way, and how you're going to put a proper label on there. So standard operating procedures, it sounds a little bit scary, and when you download the document, it looks a little bit daunting. But in the end, what it really comes down to is just taking your processes and writing them down step by step. So it's not that hard, and a lot of the standard operating procedures that you have to kind of look at for your specific product are easy to track and to make sure that you're keeping up with them. All right, so when it comes to shelf-stable foods, I'm going to find Tracy on here and see. I got two Tracys. Asked to unmute.
Sean?
Hello.
Hi, this is Tracy McDade. I also asked Tracy Keltner to join us too.
Yep, I just asked her to unmute, so.
Okay, she's a processing senior.
Okay, could you introduce yourself to the crowd a little bit for us?
Sure. My name is Tracy McDade. I am the food safety inspector in Genesee County, and I am the inspector for the Flint Food Works kitchen.
All right.
And then Tracy Keltner.
I'm Tracy Keltner. I'm a food inspector in Shiawassee and Livingston counties.
Cool. Well, welcome, ladies. And just for the rest of the crowd, so you know, this is my first time meeting Tracy Keltner, but I do personally, I lean on Tracy McDade constantly for questions, and everything I know about all of this pretty much has to do with her. So what I want these ladies to explain is some of the ins and outs as it regards to making shelf-stable goods, and something called, acidified or low acid and canned food guidance. So you guys want to kind of go over the steps that are involved in that?
Sure. Well, it's a little different depending on if you are going to sell at retail or if you are going to sell at wholesale. If you are going to sell your product wholesale, you will fall under this called the CFRs. But did you want to talk about retail first, Sean?
What's that?
Did you want to talk about retail sales first?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so I'm going to let Tracy Keltner talk a little bit about selling at retail and variances and things.
Okay. Let me pull up my notes here. Depending on your product, and McDade, if I'm wrong on anything or off, let me know here. I would say your first step, if you're doing like something pickled or canned, you want to figure out if it's a low acid or acidified food, or sorry, low acid or acidified food. And that can be done with testing and evaluation of your product to see where your pH is and your water activity. If it's an acidified or low acid food, there's a lot more requirements you have to do. If it's an acid food and you want to shelf stable, it's a lot easier. Then we kind of compare it to a table in the food code to figure out if it's potentially hazardous or not. And then if you're licensed as retail, so you're under the food code, that you're mainly selling at farmers markets or your storefront or whatever, any specialized processing usually needs a variance and a HACCP plan. And you need variances for things such as curing food, which is like your smoked meats, but using components such as vinegar as a method of food preservation rather than flavor enhancement. So like your pickling would fall under that, and you want to make shelf-stable pickles, that would need a variance and HACCP plan. And MDR does have a nice little form that you can just kind of follow along with and fill out for your variance and HACCP plan. Let's see. Oh, and then on the slide too, Better Process Control School. That's for your low acid or acidified canned foods. I know MSU offers it once or twice a year if they still are, and there are classes online. These get a little more complicated. You would have to get a process authority, and he would evaluate your product and help you register and file your product with the FDA. Certain limits you have to follow, lots of record keeping. Let's see. What am I missing here?
Could you go into a little bit more in depth into like what a HACCP plan entails?
Yes. A HACCP plan is hazard analysis of critical control points. So if you're making, we'll take pickles. Everybody likes to make pickles or salsa. Your critical control points will usually be like salsa. It would be your cooking temperature to make sure you reach 200 degrees or whatever it is. And then each time you do that, you have to document it. And then usually pH is one too. So your critical control point is your pH of 4.1 or below. Make sure you have your pH meter. You've met that every time. And just really thorough records. And then, keeping track of your lot codes on everything. Well, that's wholesaling.
It could be retail too.
Yeah. They all kind of combine a little bit.
They do. A lot of it overlaps.
Right.
Now, what's the difference between that and wholesale, Tracy?
Well,
go ahead.
Here. So wholesaling, everything that Tracy said, if you're going to do a specialized process such as pickling or doing a low acid product or a juice product or wholesaling some type of fish, that is kind of a specialized process, and you are not required to do a variance, but you may be required to do a HACCP plan still. So wholesaling is when you are not selling it directly to the consumer. You are selling it to somebody to have it sold for you. For example, Sean's example of Myers picking up your pickled products. So for pickles, you will fall under basically 2 CFRs. One is called 21 CFR Part 117. And then 21 CFR, either 113 or 114. I can't remember exactly right now for
really quick, Tracy. That's the Code of Federal Regulations for food processors is what she's referring to.
Yes. Sorry. So in the beginning, Sean is correct. The startup cost is small. However, if you need to write a HACCP plan or you need to keep a lot of records, it is a lot of work. When you grow to be a large business, the 21 CFR Part 117 requires a lot from food processors. It's called a food safety plan, where you are going to have to do a hazard analysis, and you're going to have to review all of your ingredients to make sure that you have all of the hazards covered that could possibly be in those ingredients. And then you have to do a hazard analysis of your finished product. In addition, you will need an allergen program, sanitation program, and possibly a supplier verification program. And these programs under 117, I've seen books and books and books of paperwork. Just know that if you want to become a large food processor, that is in your future, and that's great. We need large food processors. But in the beginning, you are going to fall under 117, which you will be exempt from most of it, but not all of it. And then if it is a specialized process, there will be additional CFRs that you will fall under, and you will be required to do some extra record keeping and knowledge for that.
Yep.
I
So
hope that's clear as mud.
clear as mud. And so just to kind of emphasize what our inspectors are saying here, don't be scared of starting a business that requires these things. It's just know that there is a lot of preparation involved and a lot of follow-up involved while you're doing the work. There are a lot of resources out there. In my research, I've come across many different templates, many different third-party companies that can help you with a food plan or a HACCP plan, many different ways of tackling all these things that you have to tackle. And this is not meant to be a scary situation, but rather know what you're getting into before you decide to invest a bunch of money in pickling equipment and pickling ingredients. So it's all good. The Better Process Control School side of things is it used to be one that tripped a lot of people up, but now they're offering this course through quite a different sources online, so through distance learning. And this is a class that is taken so that you understand how to process food, in a acidified way, and how to measure the pH, and how to actually take care of the processing from beginning to end in a safe way. I remember one of the most striking things that was ever told to me was my first day of culinary school, when we came through the orientation, and the head chef of the whole school's first thing he said at the podium was, "You guys all have the ability to kill it." And as a young cook trying to figure out what we're going to do, I'm like, what does he mean by that? And it has to do with food safety. So if you don't take it seriously, you can really hurt a lot of people. So popping some salsa into a jar and canning it for your own closet at home, that's great. Flip a coin halfway through April when you pull that thing out of the cabinet and see if it's okay. Maybe nothing's happened to it. Maybe something has. The public can't take that same risk. So, that salsa that you put into a jar needs to be processed properly. So thank you so much. Was there anything else, either Tracy, that you wanted to add?
Go ahead, Tracy.
I was just going to mention there's also training requirements and documentation required under 117 also. And whether if you retail or wholesale, you can do both. Licensing kind of goes on the majority of your sales. So if you started out retail and you want to start wholesaling, that's fine too. And then if you wholesale more than retail, we can always change license types and paperwork requirements and stuff like that.
That's a good point. I didn't mean to scare anybody. I just want to let everybody know that the food safety plan, it starts when you have $1 million, when you average $1 million in sales over a 3-year period.
So starting small, you can.
Yeah, there's time. You're going to get your feet wet and know what you're doing by the time you've gotten big.
That's right. And if you're doing $3 million in sales, you need to come back and do this seminar for us again. So. All right. So moving on. Thank you, ladies. Once we figured out how to make a product and whether or not we're going to be licensed properly, the absolute most important thing, and like I said when I showed the first slide, one of the first slides, Making a plan for profitability should probably be the first thing you think about before anything. So I want to walk you through some scenarios here using a specific product, just so you get an idea of the things you got to take into consideration to make money doing this. So let's say our business idea is to create a beautiful purple heirloom homemade potato chip, something real bougie. And we want to try and make enough money to replace our income, right? We want to be a potato chip magnet. So the first thing we have to do here is kind of take a look at our our cost of our recipe. So if we're gonna make potatoes, obviously we need potato, oil, salt. Our recipe is gonna create a bulk amount of potato chips, but our serving size is 4 ounce. So we determine after all this that our cost of a serving is 50 cents. All right, then we got to put them into something. People aren't just going to take handfuls of chips away from our factory. So we're going to put them into a bag. We purchase those in bulk. There's enough to hold 4 ounces, and that bag costs 2 cents. Then we have to consider some overhead and labor. There's cost of labor at 31 cents a bag, a kitchen rent at 51 cents a bag, and then business overhead at $1.80 per bag, $2.71. So that gives us the cost to produce 1 bag of potato chips, $3.23. So I want to break this down for you so you understand where these numbers come from and how they play into making money. Breaking down all of this, let's start at the top. So your recipe cost, this is all the ingredients to make 1 portion size. So it's your bulk recipe cost divided by how many portions it makes. That equals your recipe cost. Over on the right, our scenario has a 25-pound box of potatoes for $25, oil, $30, some kosher salt for $2. So, 57 bucks is the rough bulk recipe cost. If we make that recipe 1 time and we measure it out so that we can see the yield is 114 bags, that gives us 50 cents per bag. And then we got to talk about labor. And I know that a lot of entrepreneurs start out without putting into their business plan the cost of paying themselves. So at least figure in the cost of paying somebody else to do it. And let's say, even though this is you doing it, let's say you pay yourself minimum wage, $9.45. During an 8-hour shift, that's $75.60. And we're gonna throw our estimated payroll taxes at $12.08. So it's a total of $87.68 for payroll. That employee, even if it's you, can only produce 282 bags of chips in that 8-hour shift. So each bag of chips costs 31 cents in labor. So if you're renting a kitchen for like the Flint Food Works to make these potato chips in, we're talking about $18 an hour. During an 8-hour shift, that's $144. So obviously we already know we produce 282 bags. At 51 cents per bag, and that comes out to 51 cents per bag in kitchen rent. All these costs of like insurance, licensing, marketing, your dues and subscriptions, your store supplies, what have you. There's all this stuff called business overhead. And if you're making a product, it's easy to kind of wrap that into the cost of making the product so that you're extracting those costs out of the customer. So all of those costs, and let's say, annualized, you kind of just divide it by the amount of production shifts you run in a year. And I'm just plucking this number out of the air, $1.89. So our totals for this bag of chips, $3.21 plus 2 cents of packaging comes out to $3.23 a bag. Very simplified in how I put this together, but just so you guys are getting an idea of formulating your idea and putting it to, actually implementing it. How do we make money doing this? So one of the things that's really important while you're planning your business is to do a little bit of market research. And whether that's pickles or salsa or barbecue sauce or what have you, potato chips, you're going to want to go to the store and figure out in the potato chip aisle what products are similar to your product and how much do they cost. and get an average of prices. Because if Frito-Lay is selling purple potato chips and Terra is selling purple potato chips and Ruffles and whoever else, if they're all selling potato chips, you need to know what your cost is going to be compared to theirs so that you're not too far outside the margins. If you're way too much more than their product, then it's probably not going to get purchased. They're going to walk right by it for the cheaper product. If it's way too little, then you're probably leaving money on the table and you're not charging enough. So your cost of putting a bag together is $3.23. And your desired profit margin is 50%. So you're going to need to sell that chip bag for $6.49. You can see, obviously, that you're quite a bit more than a bag of Terra chips from Amazon. Don't be too scared by being much more than some of the mass-produced goods out there. There is a premium to be had for a locally made artisan product, such as one that you might be making. Usually 20 to 30% more is pretty safe. But once again, do your research. Do the research and just walk down the aisle and figure out pricing. Do some online shopping and see what it costs for things. So your potential profit on this bag of chips is $3.26, working within our generic scenario. How do you make money and kind of replace your income making these potato chips? So let's say you just want to make a gross profit of $50,000 so that you can quit your job. That means you're going to have to sell 15,337 bags or 1,278 cases of 12 bags each, or 25 cases per week. So think about that. Before you jump into any kind of food or any kind of a business, especially food business, figure out how much you're going to need to sell to replace your income. Or is this just going to be a perpetual side hustle? Is it something you want to do just for the heck of it? If you're really looking to start a business and be an entrepreneur and make it your business, your income and your profession, work your way backwards from how much you need to make to live. You know, if $50,000 gets it and you can pay your rent and have some money to go out on the weekends every once in a while, then this is the scenario you're looking at. You know, and this is just 100% hypothetical, but it's an exercise that I think everybody on this product that you're thinking about, just so you get an idea of what you need to do to make it. I'd hate to see you start a business and then realize that, you know, the profits that you're making on that business are just not enough to make it worthwhile. Figure that out ahead of time. All right. So, you know, we discussed all the licensing and figuring out how to actually, get your business established. Once you do that, you really need to start doing some in-depth planning. And this is something that I'm going to share with everybody as well. This is something called a business model canvas. And it's a very simple sort of brainstorming worksheet that you can use to figure out, you know, your pathway to the marketplace with your product. So some of the areas that we're looking at on here are key partners. So you'd want to sit down with this sheet and maybe list, like, who are your suppliers, who are your partners in this venture, what are the motivations for these partnerships. So, like, you know, let's use the potato chip example. Let's say I'm trying to be a sustainable business that only uses local produce. Obviously, one of my key partners might be a farmer in the area or a food hub that I can source all of my potatoes from. And my motivations for using that partner would be that part of my business model is sustainability and local food production. Key activities. So what key activities does your value proposition require? What activities are most important, you know, to your business? Does that mean, you know, the production is your most important thing, or is it the distribution? The value proposition, which is really where you should start, you know, before all this, is like, you know, are you solving a problem for the consumer? That goes to your value proposition. what core value do you deliver to your customer? And what needs are you satisfying? And I'm going to apologize ahead of time if I'm offending anybody on this statement. If you're in the store-bought, shelf-stable salsa business, I want you to think very, very hard about your value proposition, because if you walk into any grocery store in the United States, their salsa aisles probably, or salsa sections probably about the biggest section in any aisle. So if your salsa is going to make it onto that shelf, why? Why is it better than all the other salsas that are already on that shelf? And that's where your value proposition comes in. All right. Is it better because it only uses heirloom tomatoes grown, in Genesee County, and that's your value proposition? Is it because it's made from heirloom tomatoes grown in Genesee County, and the production is done by at-risk youth to keep them off the streets? Those are the sorts of value propositions that you need to think about if you're putting a product into the marketplace that is already saturated with a similar product. Your customer relationships. So what sort of relationship are you going to have with your customer? Is it your target customer a group of millennials who only eat heirloom tomato salsa? Or is your customer relationship based on making 5-gallon buckets of salsa and selling them to restaurants? Those are the things that those are the things that you need to consider while you're planning. And that goes into the customer segment. Which classes are you creating values for? Customer segments for your business can be twofold, especially with a food product. So I use that example of restaurants right there as one really good one. If you're making a product that is also something that can be sold in bulk to a food service provider, are you making cookies that are all great in a package, but could also be sold frozen to a cafeteria? That's two different customer segments that you could be selling to, having two different types of revenue streams for your business. So don't think about your business or your product being sold to just one type of person. See what other doors might be open for you. Distribution channels. Through which channels are your customers going to be reached? And this isn't just like, it's got a little truck on there. This isn't just about distribution of your product to the customer, from point A to point B. This is also to think about like how you're going to reach them for marketing, how you're going to reach out to your customer and say, hey, I've got this product for sale. Is that through sampling at a store on Saturdays? Is it through offering a wholesale free cases so that the store can sample it? Is it social media? Are you doing a social media campaign? So these are the things that you write down on this little square. And then cost structure. We talked a little bit about that in the last couple slides with your recipe planning. What are the costs involved in your business, and which parts of those business are the most expensive, and the activities are most expensive. So writing this stuff down so and then revenue streams. What value are your customers willing to pay? And this comes right down to that idea of walking down the aisle and checking out your competition to see what they charge. How much does each revenue stream contribute to the overall revenues? So if we're going in that customer segment box and talking about selling to a customer in one way and then a wholesale like restaurant account in another way, how are we going to measure those two matrix or those two ideas there and find out maybe in 6 months that selling to customers directly just isn't worth it? You aren't making enough profit. But this other revenue stream of selling 5 gallons of salsa at a time to restaurants is extremely profitable. And are you willing to make a change or pivot your business to realize greater profits through that different revenue stream? So this little piece of paper that will be shared with you guys is called the business model canvas. There's a lot of different kind of research, not research, but information shared on the internet about how to use this specific tool in planning your business. I find it helpful because I'm a visual person, but this is a great way to kind of brainstorm things. Do it in pencil so you can scratch out and erase and add and subtract and really utilize it to its most potential. Another thing for you guys to consider doing as an exercise is something called a SWOT analysis, and this is an old school business deal here, business school deal. Just to identify your own business, what your strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats are. This is obviously, if you read into it here, they're talking about Mars. So one of the strengths of Mars is, despite being red, it's a cold place. One of its opportunities, it's composed mostly of hydrogen and helium. So looking at your own business, if it's that salsa business, your strengths are that it's a product that's made with superior ingredients. Its opportunity is that I've got both direct consumer sales as well as wholesale institutional sales being my two channels to make money. My weakness, obviously, there's a ton of salsa in the marketplace, and the threats, basically being overrun by cheaper, more inferior salsa. So that's some of the things that we have to think about. So that's another document that will be shared with you guys. All right, I'm going to go through real quick, and I just want to read through some of these questions in the chat real quick, just so I can make sure. Where can we find the template document for the SOP? I will share a link to that. Good question, Colleen. There is a link on both the State of Michigan's website as well as the Genesee County Health Department. This kind of resources document that we're going to send out will have links for all of this. And then Nick has said that everybody's going to try and share the resource page after the session. And I believe I can share this PowerPoint as well. So we can, the presentation can go out to everybody as well. And then let's see. I think I got all the questions that are in the chat. Nick, do you want to chime in here? And I don't know if you want to moderate, if anybody has any live questions.
Yeah, that'd be great. Looks like we got one right here from Filiberto. Do you offer the Better Process Control class?
No, so the Better Process Controls class is offered locally in state at Michigan State University, and you can just Google Better Process Control School, Michigan State University, once in the fall and once in the spring. Otherwise, if you also just research Better Process Control School, there are quite a few distance learning opportunities available through like University of Tennessee, University of California, Irvine, I believe is one of them. There are obviously, with the pandemic changing the shift of in-person learning, quite a few of these universities have taken their coursework and put it online. I believe it is a 10-week course for most of them, and pricing can range from $400 to $1,000 depending on who you go with. Those are just the few of the pricing or prices that I've seen personally.
Okay, and I'll just encourage people to keep sending their questions. We have one here from Sarah and Brian. How do I go about getting my business license, not the LLC articles of incorporation, the license itself?
So that's kind of a weird misnomer that you need a license to do business. The only license you need is that LLC, and the license itself it's the food service license. And so that is where we talked about filling out the paperwork, the application, and the standard operating procedures, and then getting an inspection from an inspector. So the license for food service production is tied to a facility of some sort, all right? Meaning you can't use your home kitchen. So if you are looking for a food service license to produce either your catering operation or make your salsa, you're going to have a licensed kitchen similar to the Flint Food Works, or possibly a church kitchen, or building out your own 4 walls.
Perfect. Just a couple quick more questions here. Back to Ray's question, can we get a hard copy? Yes, we'll share a copy when we send that follow-up email with the resources, and then a recording of this presentation will be available on our website, and I'll share that link before we're done here today. Um, the next question is from Harambe Wellness. Are there any courses for ServSafe certification offered locally in the greater Flint area?
There usually are, but once again, with the COVID pandemic, things have gotten canceled. If you go to the Michigan Restaurant Association website, they generally have listings of ServSafe courses that are offered throughout the state. Usually Michigan State Extension right here, in downtown Flint, offers classes like once a month, but they have also closed down their in-person learning right now. Option two is that you can go to servesafe.org and you can sign up for a online course where you can do the self-study option, and then they offer you a voucher to take to a testing center, so like a Prometric or someplace like that, where you take the test with a proctor. So those are the options right now. We are planning on doing some ServSafe courses with the Flint Food Works later in the spring here, but right now we're kind of restricted.
Two more questions it looks like so far. The first is from Colleen. So specifically, she's asking about which license she would need for a business that is not selling hot food, but food that would be taken home prepared. So she's doing kind of the prep work for the food, and then maybe similar to HelloFresh or something like that.
Yeah.
They'll follow simple directions and cook it themselves.
Well, that's a license that would fall under the Michigan Department of Agriculture, and you're just going to be a retail food establishment license is what it's called. So that one-time $186 fee. And the steps to do that, once again, are having the facility to do the work in, and then filling out your food service license application along with the standard operating procedures, which tie back to your menu.
And last question, speaking of facilities, Filiberto asks, is the Flint Food Works kitchen available to the public?
It's available to come in and become a member of. We don't let people just float in and out on a rental basis. You have to be licensed to use the facilities. Reason being that we have about a dozen businesses that are using that kitchen as their home base for their business, and they're dependent on the facilities kind of being used by licensed food works, licensed food production businesses. So we can't just have somebody walk in off the street and just rent it to like canned tomatoes or something for a day.
And I'll put the Flint Food Works web address in the chat here, but could you just tell people a little about the facilities, kind of what it's set up for, what the two kitchens do?
Yeah, the Flint Food Works, two different separate spaces. They're commercial kitchen spaces with, everything you would expect to find in a commercial kitchen, the exhaust hoods with commercial cooking equipment underneath it. So convection ovens, commercial range, 40-gallon steam kettle, char grill. Each one of the spaces has adequate work tables kind of spread out throughout there. The 3-compartment sinks and the chemicals needed to wash, rinse, and sanitize dishes. Vegetable prep sinks, as well as a reach-in refrigerator and freezer to use while you're in the space. And then our members have access to storage cages that they utilize to store food in our walk-in cooler, walk-in freezer, and in the dry storage area. Once you become a licensed kitchen user, you have to kind of keep your food stored, whether it's raw product or finished product. It has to be stored on site, so you can't take ingredients back and forth to home, and that sort of thing. So the facilities are rented $18 an hour, and the availability is 24/7. So our kitchen members are given a key to the facility. They log in and book their time as needed. on a program called the Food Corridor, and basically just get in and do their production work as needed.
And then one final question here is at least what I'm seeing so far, again from Sarah and Brian. If I'll be preparing my food and packaging it in a registered commercial kitchen, do I need to pay any additional fees to the health department? Do they need to have an SOP from me, etc.?
Yeah, so the misconception there is that that registered commercial kitchen, that's not your license. That's the kitchen's license. So if you're operating a food business, your specific food business has to be licensed, and you would do it in that commercial kitchen. So I'm going to use like a church as an example. Let's say you find a church and they have the Genesee County Health Department comes in every year and issues their food service license for that facility. That's for them. It's not for your business. So your business, if it's Sarah and Brian's Packaged Foods LLC, you need to work with either the Michigan Department of Agriculture or Genesee County Health Department to issue a license to your specific business based on your standard operating procedures for your menu. Okay, and that's how we operate at the Flint Food Works. Each one of the individual businesses that works in our kitchens has their own license. The Flint Food Works does not carry a food service license.
I think that's the last of the questions. I just want to chime in too that if you guys, any of the processes you've seen today, whether that's doing your legal filing for the LLC, working with the business model canvas, or trying to understand that financial model, that's something that we can also help with at U of M Flint at no cost to you as part of our services. So there is a web address in the chat. If you're interested in using any of those services, you just fill out a quick intake form on our website, and then we contact you, and we work through Zoom at this point as well.
Use their services. They're great.
We have great partners as well. So we all try to share the good stuff that we have to offer. And with that, just one last kind of plug for our next upcoming workshop as part of this 3-part series. And that's going to be on October 21st. It's going to be around marketing your brand and your products. Again, we're going to be lucky to have Sean Gartland join us and potentially bring in some more experts. And so if that's something you have not yet registered for, again, I'll put the registration link in the chat. It's go.umflint.edu/buildingblocks2. And then our third and final one in this series is going to be offered on November 18th. Again, noon to 1:30, and to register, I'll also put that in the chat one more time. Go.umflint.edu/buildingblocks3. I really want to thank you guys for all joining us today, and a big thank you to Sean Gartland and to Tracy McDade, as well as Tracy Kelter, for joining us and providing all this wonderful information.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.